I'd like to welcome you all to the April 12th meeting for the school board business meeting. This meeting is being televised. I wish to welcome everybody. And now, if you will join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag presented colors by the Sebastian River High Naval Junior ROTC students under the direction of Lieutenant Commander Jim Landis.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander Jim Landis and students. Now we'll call for adoption of the orders of the day. This time, I wish to advise that we have added on the request of Superintendent Rendell consent item H, action item F, and G. Do I have any other additions or deletions?
Yes, I'd like to pull consent H for discussion.
I have a right to a point of order. These items that have been added were not advertised the 7 days prior, and I'm just wondering if it is legal to even have these on the agenda tonight.
Would the attorney please respond?
Thank you. Under the statutes that govern agendas for local governments, specifically school boards, the agenda must be posted 7 days ahead. Once that agenda is posted, there still may be amendments to the agenda to add or delete items. It is at the discretion of the presiding officer for the local government, which would be the chairman. So as long as the chairman approved the placement of these items on the agenda, they are legally allowed to be there.
And that's why I'm adding because the adoption of the orders of the day has to be adopted and placing it so it's a community vote. And so consent H was added but pulled. And action item F and G. Any others?
I'd like to have item consent B removed just for a brief discussion.
Consent B pulled as well. Anything further? I'll accept a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 5-0 Mustang as amended. So that will bring us to presentations. I will now turn this over to Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we get to the business part of the meeting, we do have 4 special presentations. 3 are actual presentations, and then a wonderful performance by some of our students. So, Mr. Fidgen.
Good evening, Board. Keeping with our Casual for a Cause monthly tradition this year, the school district partnered with the American Red Cross in the month of January. And as you know, it's not just about raising funds, it's also about spreading and informing the community of information about that organization. So a few things we learned about the American Red Cross in January were 5.6 million blood donations are collected by the Red Cross each year. 90% of the American Red Cross workforce are volunteers. Besides collecting blood donations, the American Red Cross provides training in first aid, CPR, and AED training. And besides blood donations, the American Red Cross also serves as a disaster relief agency. We also shared some stories of families who were displaced from their homes by fire or tornado and then helped by the Red Cross. And we shared some stories of people who were saved by family members after receiving a life-saving blood donation. So the Casual for a Cause Dress Down Day took place on January 28th. So at this time, I'd like to invite Sarah Rui to the podium to accept this check for $2,676 on behalf of teachers, students, and staff of the district.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank the school district. This was a wonderful opportunity for all the students, staff, and faculty to learn about the Red Cross. While more than 90% of the effort is volunteers, in Indian River County we have 128 volunteers from Indian River County, and we have 3 paid staff who cover 4 counties. So our percentage is much greater. We installed almost 400 smoke alarms to prevent that. We've done pillowcase presentations for our students, and we look forward to working with the school district again. Thank you so much. And I have a little certificate of appreciation to all of you to hang somewhere in the school district. And one thing I forgot to mention is that Red Cross has a free emergency application app for your phones. I'll leave flyers about it out in the hallway. It's really important as we come into hurricane season. You can download and you get all the warnings you need. Thank you.
For anybody that's been to the Teacher Employee of the Year Gala, you already know what kind of production it is. Staff put in a lot of hard work, a lot of extra hours to make sure that it's a real celebration of our teachers and staff, and a lot of what they do wouldn't be possible without the support of our community partners and sponsors. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Megan Kendrick, Coordinator of Professional Development and the Gala Mastermind, to the podium to recognize our partners.
Thank you, Flynn, for the mastermind, but this was definitely a joint effort with a lot of people involved. We have the best teachers in Indian River County, and it's so hard to recognize everything they do. And with the changing world and teachers sometimes feeling run down, this is our one opportunity where we get to have a night just for them and tell them how much we appreciate them. This year's event was absolutely amazing, and the teachers that I got feedback from said they felt loved and honored. And there is no way we could do that without the community sponsors that we have invited here tonight. So I'm going to call them up one at a time and give you just a little insight of how they've helped us. The first is Jason Odom with Gold, Cooksey, and Fennell. So you can come on up. Give him a round of applause. I have my plaques. They've been donating to this event for years, and they've always been very reliable sponsors. Their contribution helps with all the decorations and to make the event, one when you walk in, you go, wow, that's amazing. So I'm going to give you this, and we'll go take a picture. All right. Let me take it right here. All right, we'll give one more round of applause for making it a night to remember. Thank you. I told them all they'd have to participate in the musical after as well. Next, I have Kevin Rowland from Napier and Rowland. This is This is their second year participating in this event, and they've been able to provide our teachers with something extremely valuable. They do a dinner for their teachers and their spouses. This year we did it at the Osceola Bistro, and it was such a beautiful event to just let the teachers come together, to talk to each other, and to celebrate their awesomeness. So thank you so much for that. Two more. The next sponsor is the Learning Alliance. They were very generous. They were our gala sponsor this year, so give them a round of applause. It's Liz Woody. And their $5,000 contribution helped us get special gift baskets for all of the teachers. So we had movie tickets, we had gift certificates out to dinner. It was just that additional thank you that they got to bring home, and I still have people email me and say, I just used my last gift certificate. So they're very, very appreciative, all the teachers. Thank you. And finally, this is super exciting. We have Lisa Thomas from Mid-Florida. Mid-Florida has a wonderful program where they bring these giant checks to Teacher of the Year events. And I'm not talking monetarily, although they are, but they bring the great big ones you just saw, and they walk out on stage for our district winners, and they present these huge checks. And it's a surprise for most of the teachers. And, you know, the gratitude in their eyes is just always amazing that community partners, like the ones we presented today, would go this far to celebrate what they do every day. So thank you so much for that. So thank you guys for your time, and thank you to our business partners one more time.
Earlier this year, we had a Sebastian River High School Naval Junior ROTC cadet, Marina Martinelli, received a letter from DP Herbert, Commander, U.S. Navy, and Naval Junior ROTC Area 7 Manager, informing her that she had been selected for the prestigious 2016 Joseph Gilliam Academic Achievement Award. His letter stated, after carefully reviewing the outstanding academic records and school contributions and impressive essays of all Area 7 Gilliam Award nominees, Cadet Lieutenant Marina Martinelli has been selected for her outstanding extracurricular scholastic achievements at Sebastian River High School. Illustrated by the incredible accomplishments below, Cadet Martinelli has distinguished herself among the 10,000 cadets in the state of Florida and nearly the 100,000 cadets across the country. She is number 3 in her class out of 395 seniors. She has a 3.9 unweighted GPA, and that's 4.72 weighted. She's a member of the National Honor Society. She's a member of the MAP Honor Society. She's a varsity swimmer and the district champion in the 500 freestyle. She's a varsity water polo player, and she is the company commanding officer at Sebastian River High School. Cadet Martinelli, it is a distinct pleasure to recognize you as the top performing cadet in the Area 7 for 2016, and one of only 11 cadets receiving this award nationwide. Your academic acumen and incredible work ethic will serve you well as you pursue your academic dream at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy. To recognize your sustained superior performance, we are also presenting you with the Meritorious Achievement Ribbon, and this is the Naval Junior ROTC's highest award. You are to be commended and should be very proud of your incredible record. Well done. So at this time, I would like to invite Ms. Martinelli forward to accept her Certificate of Excellence, and I'd like to welcome Senior Naval Science Instructor, Lieutenant Commander Jim Landis, U.S. Navy retired, to say a few words on her behalf.
Well, good evening. I'm very, very excited to be here tonight to recognize Ms. Martinelli and her accomplishment. I think the write-up pretty much summed it up. This is a very prestigious award. 11 cadets. Why 11, you may ask? Because Naval JROTC is broken up into 11 areas. So we happen to be Area 7 here in the state of Florida. It's primarily the state of Florida. So every year, all of these cadets, almost 100,000, 10,000 here in Florida, approximately, all compete for this award. Now, this is a culminating event. This is a 4-year effort, if you will. The competition is so, it's unbelievable, really, if you look at the accomplishments. So it was very important to me that we take some time tonight to recognize her accomplishment. I think if you were to travel around the state of Florida, you may find a handful, 5, 4 cadets who are wearing this Meritorious Achievement ribbon. Only the area manager can give it. Senior naval science instructors cannot award this ribbon. Only he can, and they are not given out very often. So it's a considerable achievement. We're very, very proud of her with Sharp Company as our commanding officer, and our earlier this year as our executive officer. So I can't say enough. A great student, great cadet, and earns the recognition, or she's earned the recognition that she's getting here tonight. With that, another round of applause.
Good evening, and first I'd like to just say thank you for honoring me at tonight's meeting. I think recognition of students for their accomplishments is integral in keeping them engaged and working hard. That being said, I'd like to thank the school district and all the teachers I've had over the years. Teachers are a fundamental part of a student's academic experience, and so I've been very blessed to have amazing teachers over the years. I'd also like to thank Master Gunnery Sergeant O'Neill, Commander Landis, and Commander Laws for running Sebastian River's Navy JROTC program. I've been in the program for 4 years, and it's always provided me with an environment conducive to leadership development. And lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. Racine, who's here tonight, and Mr. Stutsky, along with all of the rest of Sebastian River's faculty and staff for helping me and guiding me over the past 4 years. Thank you.
So keeping up with our new tradition of having a musical performance before each board meeting, tonight we have students from Dodgertown Elementary who've prepared a number for you. And to introduce them, I'd like to have the principal, Miss Liz Tatro, come to the podium to introduce her students.
Thank you all. We have a very exciting year this year. It was about this time last year that our music teacher, Mr. Parks, joined our team. He was actually graduating at this time last year from Bethune-Cookman, and Dr. Fritz and the recruitment team invited him to Indian River, and he was actually, Dr. Fritz was part of our interview committee, and I think we chose an outstanding music teacher, as you will see. He's been a great addition to the Dodgertown team. This is our 5th grade chorus. They're going to play some musical instruments while they sing a couple of songs. And while they get their instruments ready, we'd like to have Tristan Ross please step forward. And Mr. Parks. And we're going to begin this evening with our Kids at Hope pledge. Tristan?
I am a kid at hope. I am a kid at hope. I am talented, smart, and capable of success. I am talented, smart, and capable of success. I have dreams for the future. I have dreams for the future. And I will climb to reach those goals and dreams every day. And I will climb to reach those goals and dreams every day. Because all children are capable of success. No exceptions. No exceptions.
To keep with our musical theme, here's a brief video highlighting some events that took place in the district over the past couple weeks. One includes a musical instrument petting zoo at Vero Beach Elementary and a recap of the Red, White, and Blue concert at Vero Beach High School.
Today we have out at Vero Beach Elementary the Instrument Petting Zoo. It's an event where kids and community members can come out and play instruments. I have instructors from Vero Beach High School and Sebastian River High School, and it's open to everyone. I needed a fundraiser idea, and I've worked with both Vero Beach and Sebastian River in their programs with music. And it's also a great tool to recruit kids to want to play instruments later on in life. They love to make sound to get to go play something they haven't seen before, learn what its name is, and learn different ways to make musical sound. The high school students, it's great publicity for the schools themselves and the opportunity to get their face out there so that if the kid really wants to play that instrument, maybe they could become their instructor and have a student of their own so that we get more kids in Indian River County playing musical instruments. Keep the program strong.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do it again louder.
Patriotic music filled the James M. Sammons Auditorium on April 3rd and 4th for the annual Red, White, and Blue concert. The event, in its 23rd year, featured musical selections performed by the symphonic and jazz bands from Vero Beach High School. In all, 220 students took the stage during the show. Prior to the start of the concert, Director of Bands James Sammons and Associate Director of Bands Paige Howell took a moment to recognize World War II Army veteran Richard Cornell, the founder of the show, who passed away in October at the age of 98. The school's next scheduled band performance is the Masterworks Concert at 7 p.m. on April 21st at the Performing Arts Center. The upcoming show will feature the symphony, philharmonic, and symphonic concert bands.
Thank you, and I want to thank the Dodgertown students that came, and we heard you. We were given our orders. We have to give A's all day, I think they said. A's all day.
A's all day.
That's it. We're doing A's. That was wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Rendell, for inviting them. At this time, we have no citizen input, but I do want to thank the charter school students that are here for watching a government meeting. Please, we thank you for being here. The next item is consent agenda with the, as for the orders of the day, with the removal of item B and item H. Do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Any discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Just to congratulate the Sebastian River High School Band, who will be going to Seattle in November of 2016. You see the theme. Our school district is very supportive of the arts, and we are lucky that your taxpayer dollars allow us to continue our arts programs in the school, so thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, Ms. Stang. Item B from consent agenda. I believe that was Mr. Searcy?
Yes. I just had a question about item under personnel, item 1. It just kind of intrigues me that we've got the first person on there is going to be at .6, reducing, I guess, from a full-time to a .6 with benefits. And the next one on the list is going from a full-time to .4, no benefits. How do you determine whether it's going to be .4 or .6?
So that's a job sharing, and I'll have Dr. Fritz explain how that works.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. In the elementary school level especially, we often have what are called, not often, but occasionally have what we call job shares. There are two employees who would like to combine together to teach a single class. In this case, you have a teacher who is indicated to the principal that they have an interest in teaching 3 days a week, and the other teacher would teach 2 days a week, which, .6 and .4 are those portions of the week. The job share is a function of the IRCEA contract. We have an agreement with the Teachers Association that we will honor job share requests, and we are doing so with these individual teachers.
Okay, thank you. The second question that I had, thank you very much. The second question I had is on the job description that you have in there. It looks like we're going to be changing the job description to allow a technician to handle gas and refrigeration equipment without proper certification. And I'm not quite sure. It looks to me like we should offer the job without certification, then whenever they get the certification, allow them to do the job they're supposed to do, and maybe then give them a pay raise. But I don't know why you would take out the qualifications. It almost looks like we're lowering the standard for the job.
So we did discuss that the other day. Dr. Fritz?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rendell. With that particular position, it is a position that actually was created a few months ago. It was at the recommendation of our food service director. There have been some challenges in the food service department because we have different pieces of equipment that utilize different capabilities. We obviously have refrigeration units, walk-in refrigerators, freezers, etc. We also have gas equipment within the kitchens in our schools, and the desire was to have somebody who could repair all of that equipment within the food service organization. The challenge has been in finding applicants for positions that actually already hold and possess both certifications to do gas and refrigeration. Those sort of people do exist, but they are fairly rare. And so at the recommendation of the food service director, we will be looking for a candidate who already has one of those licenses and certifications and the ability to acquire an interest in acquiring the other one within a 12-month period, because it takes some time and training to do that. We won't be allowing somebody to work on equipment until they actually have the second certification. They will need to have one or the other coming in, and they will be able to obtain the other, which means we will be able to find applicants for the position. If they do not acquire that within the year, we would not be able to retain them as an employee, because we do need both of those eventually. So this is a way to be able to attract applicants to the position and eventually have what we need in the organization.
And so by eliminating those certifications, did the pay scale come down, or?
We did not eliminate the certifications. We're just allowing them to obtain it within the first year. And so we did not change the pay scale recommended, because you need to pay an industry pay rate in order to attract and retain individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Any further? I'll entertain a motion for item B.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 Mustang. Item H, the approval of the suspension of the instructional employee. Ms. Jimenez?
Yes, thank you. I pulled this item. All of the board members received a letter and a timeline from one of the parents whose child was in this individual's classroom. And I think that because we actually have backup information that is very detailed in terms of some of the behavior, I think it's important to understand the rationale of the school district in terms as to why this is a suspension and not a termination. So I just thought it was important to offer the superintendent an opportunity to explain how that works.
So we have a progressive discipline as part of how we handle employee misconduct or failure to act in a responsible manner. Each time that we have a situation like this, we have to determine at what level we want to issue the consequence. And after you issue the first consequence, you hope that the behavior changes or does not occur again. And so we're engaged in this progressive discipline process with this employee. This is actually the second step in the process, or the second penalty, so to speak, that has been issued.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So if this behavior occurs again, the person receives support, what would the next step be?
Correct. It's a good point. Is we do offer support in each of these situations to make sure that the employee has the skills or training necessary to not engage in the behavior again. In the form of progressive discipline, in this situation, we're recommending a 7-day suspension without pay. If there were to be another incident where we'd have to issue some discipline, it would probably be a recommendation for termination.
Thank you.
Mr. Susi?
Would it be to our benefit, based on the charges that I see here, to remove this person from contact with students?
That is something
obviously, obviously, excuse me for interrupting, but obviously this is not the first incident for this particular individual. And we happened, this board, and agreed with you several weeks ago to suspend a person for an incident, and we move them into a position where there's no student contact. And based on what I'm seeing here and what I've heard, was that an option?
That is actually a part of the process. Whenever we have an incident like this, one of the steps we may employ while we're investigating the situation is to remove that person from a classroom setting and put them in a temporary position while we investigate the situation.
For 7 days, though.
Yes, sir, and we have used that in this situation as well.
Mr.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Not
Out of
yet.
order. Okay.
Would you like to make a
Were we in
motion?
debate?
No.
Okay.
It was
Okay.
pulled by Ms. Jimenez.
Yeah, I do have another comment to Mr. Searcy's point. I understand that we have a process and that we have progressive discipline, but I also share that concern because I was aware of the previous incidents. And, I do wonder when the district looks at a situation like this and says, you know, this person just should not be in the classroom with children? And is there any alternative? I know that in other situations, the school district makes an effort to move someone because they're not going to terminate, but they put them in another role. Could this not be a situation where this person needs to be in a role where this doesn't occur again? Because this is, you know, these are our students. This is a child, and I don't know how many others that are really affected by the behavior of a trusted adult in the classroom. And I understand we have progressive discipline, and that's why I'm hesitant to bring it up. But on the other hand, who is speaking for the students that will have to engage? Because with this particular situation, the person was moved from one school to another. And I'm not advocating that we put this person in yet another school, because it seems that no matter where the person is placed, there are some issues. Was any consideration given to just putting them in another role?
I don't believe there was any consideration to putting them in a different role. We can ask Dr. Fritz to weigh in, but you know, basically the idea is this is a classroom teacher. They should be able to function in the classroom in which they're assigned and they're qualified to teach. And so if we have to provide additional support, we've been doing that. And like I said, we're engaged in that progressive discipline process. Dr. Fritz?
I would mirror what you said, Dr. Rendell. If the person's job is to teach, we need them to be the teacher. And if we are not able to place them in a classroom as a teacher in an area where they're certificated, we really can't have them as an employee.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing differently? The first time, obviously, whatever support you provided was not enough. So what's the progressive additional support?
We are engaging with this teacher with a plan for improvement. So the principal and myself have been working with that teacher, as has the Teachers Association. They've been a partner in this training. So there's been additional training, additional coaching. Actually, they participated in some additional workshop training, readings, things like that to try to figure things out on how to work in the classroom. And so we have made significant efforts with this particular teacher, and we'll continue to do so.
Mr. Frost.
Thank you. You know, having read this and spoken with parents, and having all of the history, I'm not comfortable supporting this suggestion. I think we really need to revisit this entire process, because, you know, as someone who's been in the classroom, I can tell you that this person really should not have student contact right now. And very candidly, you know, the concern that I share with a parent is that this is the only teacher offering a specific course that has ramifications next year for these students. So to my mind, you know, we should be making way for the hiring of a good, you know, a teacher who can function in the classroom. So for that reason, I don't think I'll be able to support this recommendation of, if that's an option, of that. And I would encourage the opening of a dialogue around the progressive discipline plan and where it may be failing our students, because that's the business we're in, is student success. And I don't know that this action moves us in that direction. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Searcy?
I'm hoping that we don't see, as I saw in the last couple of days, this teacher's classroom on television. I don't know if y'all seen the videos, but there have been some vicious attacks by teachers on television. And my feeling is like Sean's, and I believe Ms. Jimenez's, that this teacher doesn't belong in a classroom in this district. And I don't believe I can support just the 7-day deal. I think it's time to move ahead and make sure that we've got the right teacher in that classroom.
Ms. Jimenez?
Yes, I have a question. Dr. Rendell, what would the ramifications be if the board does not support your recommendation, you know, legally? I mean, we have a contract, you say you have a process, so what would that look like?
Ms. DiAgresta can correct me if I'm wrong, or Dr. Fritz could jump in. If the recommended consequence that's on the table before you was not approved, then the teacher would go back into the classroom until we come up with another recommendation. Ms. DiAgresta.
Yes, the recommendation of the superintendent before you is to approve a suspension without pay for a period of days. If that recommendation is not passed by this board, then there is no suspension, that the individual goes back to their work assignment. Until such time as the superintendent can come forward with an alternate recommendation of some sort, or you have an opportunity to have a further discussion on the process, if you will. If a decision is made to change the process for disciplining employees, please remember it would not be retroactive back in time. It would start from that date where you change your process moving forward. So the process that we have in place now for progressive discipline is the process that we must follow, the rule that we've established for ourselves. But moving forward, you can certainly have a discussion and make changes about what progressive discipline should look like moving forward. But we have a process in place in your collective bargaining agreement with your teacher union for that progressive discipline process right now.
Can I jump? I had a question. So if we move forward with the process or the recommendation, the teacher is removed from the classroom immediately with an unpaid suspension for 7 days. But is it at the discretion of the superintendent? Because obviously, at your discretion, you do not have to return that teacher to that classroom. Is that correct? If our recommendation was to suspend without pay for 7 days and also not to return to that class, is that,
That could be a recommendation. We would then have to find another teacher for that class, and we would also have to place this employee in some other capacity.
Okay. And I just wanted to throw that out there because it's sort of like if there's no recommendation, she goes back. If she, and I do have another question. Just the flip of the coin on the other side, if the teacher was suspended and the recommendation was passed without the caveat, the particular student in question would it be protocol, standard operational procedure to move that student instead of resubjecting that student?
I'm not sure which student you're referring to, but I believe
well, we had received from one parent that there was a particular problem from one student with the,
Right.
If I may, I'm aware of the letter that the board has received, and that student is no longer in that class.
Then that answers that. So then that's some of the options, Ms. Jimenez.
Yeah, I'm glad the student is not in that class, but I'm still concerned about the rest of the students. I wouldn't want to reject the superintendent's recommendation because I don't want to see that teacher in the classroom, but it sounds like even if I supported the superintendent's recommendation, the teacher's going to be back in the classroom after 7 days. Am I understanding that correctly? Because that's just the second level of consequence for her behavior. And I think that from what I've read here, I just have a hard time understanding how we believe as a school district that this person deserves to be in the classroom. So I would just like to ask you, Dr. Rendell, do you really, because I really believe that you are paying attention and you have the interest of our students at heart. I really do believe that. And so I just really want to understand why you think, and because your recommendation implies that despite this incident and the one at the previous school, you still think that this is okay for students. Because I'm concerned about the students.
Okay, first of all, I don't think I can include any activity at a previous school when we're issuing consequences for the actions that are at hand. Mm-hmm. This is progressive discipline based on, our negotiated contract with the union, that kind of thing. The initial consequence was a 5-day suspension without pay, which is pretty serious. 7-day suspension without pay is even more serious, and like I said, the probable next issue, consequence would be a recommendation for termination. I can ask Ms. DeAgresta to weigh in, or Dr. Fritz. We could amend the recommendation to 7-day suspension without pay and not to return to the classroom until the time at which we think it's appropriate for her to return to the classroom. That would give us time to put her in a temporary placement and, something like that if that's something to be more amenable to the board.
Mr. Frost.
And I'd have to ask Ms. DeAgresta if we could do that.
Thank you. I have questions about that. The first being, we would have to pay her upon her 7-day return.
After the
And
7 days without pay,
we would have
correct.
to hire another teacher at district expense to cover her classroom assignment.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I understand that may be the best deal we have on the table, but, I support you. Students.
What I could pledge to the board is that this teacher will not return to the classroom unless I think it's absolutely the best thing to do for the students.
What's going to change your mind? You're not going to see her for 7 days. She's not going to be in the classroom. And then you're going to decide, and we like you, Doc, I'm not trying to give you a bad time, but the student, we fight real hard for the students in this district, and would it be, Madam Chairman, could we just amend the motion to?
There's no motion yet.
Well, okay.
Yeah,
then,
yeah. That's why we're
as a
talking.
recommendation, could we put together a motion that said we agree with this for the 7 days? And then the caveat on that would be that when that person returns from her 7-day leave or whatever, that she be placed in a different spot, not having any contact with students until we have our policy change so we can do the progressive moves and move to termination. Because the person, based on what I'm seeing and what you guys are talking about, this person doesn't need to be teaching our kids.
Mr. McKay.
Just real briefly, Ms. DeAgresta, is it easy enough just to make a policy change, or does that have to be negotiated with IRCEA?
Any changes to progressive discipline that are contained within the IRCEA collective bargaining agreement would need to be negotiated with the union. I also heard it was either Dr. Fritz or Dr. Rendell mentioned an improvement plan. That type of document or that type of plan would be able to include professional development in areas that would be supportive of changes in behavior. And perhaps that's a way to get at the issue that you're discussing, is that appropriate professional development would be included in the improvement plan, and that the individual would need to complete that professional development to the satisfaction of the superintendent.
There's something that, and I understand that what we have before us is for this particular incident. But this is a progressive plan. So even though we say that the previous stuff doesn't matter, it does, because that was part 1 of progressive. This is part 2 of progressive. My question is, the first time it happened in another school with other students should have been an opportunity for an adult that has the responsibility of working with students who are in a power-under relationship. That should have been enough for that adult, when they're moved to another school, starting again, had issues with those kids, I'm in a different place, and the person did it again. So what I ask myself is, are we willing to let this happen again to another group of students before we terminate this employee? And I do think it's a valid question. You know, I don't believe that we modify policies to address the issues of one person's behavior. It's not that the progressive discipline model doesn't work. It's that human beings are complex and situations are complex. And this particular situation is egregious enough that this plan isn't working for it. It doesn't mean that the plan doesn't work. For all the other employees where it wasn't something to this level, that works. So I'm not even advocating that we change our plan because the plan is working. But every once in a while, you come across a situation where you say, wait a minute, is this good for kids? And in the first school, it wasn't good for students. Right now, it's not good for students. So how can I, in good conscience, say, well, let's do it one more time because that's what the rules say, that after a third time, we terminate. That's what I struggle with. That's what I'm struggling with because just reading this timeline for one child and for other children, other students to be in a classroom and say, wow, a teacher can do this and come right back? You know, even though the one child is gone, all those other students that were there witnessed that behavior. And they've got to have something going on in their minds. I don't know if they've gotten any support to process what they experienced because that's not for a student, for an adolescent, that is just not a safe learning environment. So, you know, I would like to see this person not in front of students because this is the second layer, and I don't think that's going to change.
I have some questions I'd like to jump, and then I'm going to jump in with some of my thoughts. First of all, in Progressive, this is a recommendation for 7, but is there a minimum max? Like, we could do 7 and we could go up to 21. It may not matter with what, but I just want to make sure I'm fully informed on.
There's a standard progression, Dr. Fritz.
Yes, obviously progression means they're increasing. They're typically with an employee, anything beyond 10 days would be termination. I mean, typically 10 days is the maximum. And I will defer to Ms. DeGresta. If it were the interest or will of the board, could the board recommend more than what the superintendent recommended?
As long as the collective bargaining agreement doesn't contain specific numbers of days, then
it does not. And I guess I also will speak to progressive discipline. I obviously make recommendations to the superintendent, and the superintendent either supports or has me revise it. So I'm the individual who made the recommendation to the superintendent for 7 days. I'll speak to the reasoning. Obviously, there is a requirement by the collective bargaining agreement, which has been mentioned. There's a requirement by school board policy related to that. But there also is, in the 7 tests of just cause, a requirement that we consider progressive discipline. So even absent of a policy, absent of the language in the collective bargaining agreement, if we went to arbitration over, for example, a termination at this point in time, there's the reasonable possibility of not winning that, which puts the teacher right back in the classroom. Okay. And I don't make recommendations to the superintendent unless I feel like I can go defend the district and win. And I didn't feel in this case,
sure.
Given that there was only one previous consequence, that if we ended up going to arbitration, that I could guarantee a win. In fact, I think that there's reasonable likelihood that the teacher would end up in the classroom and it would be no harm, no foul based on the arbitrator's ruling. So my concern over that is what led to the recommendation.
But 10 is the max.
Of 7 days. 10 is typically the maximum that we would do prior to termination.
And that was part of my question. Then the other thing is that this teacher was notified of this suspension prior to today, just like other people are notified, and they can request a hearing. I just want to make sure that, the teacher's rights are, it's not that there was a recommendation for a suspension of 7 days, and then they requested a hearing, or does it go to non-binding arbitration? Please make sure the process, we know all this process, because I don't see the teacher didn't do citizen input, and
I can speak to that. The teacher would have the ability to grieve this process through the processes in the collective bargaining agreement. Obviously, at the end of that process, there is an arbitration process that occurs. in a hearing, but typically these things go through 3 or 4 steps at the 3 steps at the school district level before they move to an outside
Thank you.
judiciary.
So I just want to make sure I have, so with all that input, then I can talk of my thoughts on the subject, that in general, and I'm not saying in this case, but this is why we have progression, and this is why it's carved out in the union. People work for agencies, departments, institutions, government agencies for many years. And sometimes they may not have a stellar year. They may have personal problems at home. They may have many things that go on. So that's why you have, because you can have an outstanding teacher or police officer or fireman, and they may have things going on in their lives. And so that's why we have progressive discipline. And I'm not ruling on this case in particular. I don't know this person's business at all. But the information that, so that's the protection of the teacher and with their union. And then you have the board and the recommendation, and it brings forward. And we really look at this as a progression, but then there's something that goes when you see some progression stuff, and then in different cases. But in this case, there's some things that you read, and then your belly goes, well, this is not good. Even though it's progressive and you want to be fair, we really feel that perhaps progression, and it's a best guess, that may not have an end result that's productive. But you want to be fair to the person at hand. So I think I would support this. I would weigh in that I would support the superintendent's recommendation, and I really don't feel that this teacher would be, definitely should be going back to the classroom with an extensive plan confirmed by you. Or another question I would ask is, and this would be my final question, is this a contracted employee that's contract is ending June 30th?
No, it's not an annual contract employee.
Okay. So, I'm not sure if anyone wants to give any input. I don't know where this leaves us. I'm at a quandary myself.
We need a motion.
Somebody's making a motion.
Can I just ask a final question?
Sure.
So in the disciplinary recommendation letter, it says that there's a violation of the principles of professional conduct and school board policy 3210, and misconduct in office. There are 4 items. So we don't believe that would really support a grievance if this teacher were to be terminated. That's not enough. Because there may not have been any physical contact, but the emotional issues are just as bad. So that's not enough? What does it take?
A series of events, and consultation with Dr. Fritz, this is what we thought the appropriate consequence was for the actions to this point.
I have a question on, so also as far as protected rights, would you have had to serve that teacher with the termination recommendation prior? And I see our attorney, so that's something that can't be done. I mean, we would be in violation if we just to say, if we were the attorney, and I'll let her jump in if you want, but we could not terminate this teacher tonight because we have not served her with that notice, allowing her time, like the other terminations, to request a hearing. So is that correct? Did I interpret the?
Yes, that is correct. Any employee who is being recommended for a termination gets prior notice of that recommendation and an opportunity to request a hearing. Or depending upon the collective bargaining agreement, there might be a grievance process involved. But yes, they do get prior notice of such a recommendation.
So why don't I jump in with a motion and see if it floats? I'll make a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation for 7-day suspension unpaid, and with the addition that the teacher is not to return to the classroom until a satisfactory improvement plan and can be made, and if not, a further recommendation brought forward by the superintendent.
Second.
Discussion? So, Dr. Rendell, what does that mean? An improvement plan? You couldn't do that in 7 days? I'm at a loss here.
Dr. Fritz can fill me in on the details, but basically, she's already under an improvement plan. We would probably strengthen that improvement plan. We would not return her back to the classroom until we were confident that that would be the best thing for her and for the students. So more than likely, when she would return from the 7-day suspension, we would not place her directly back in the classroom. There would be a period of time where we'd monitor, her actions or her attitude or whatever to make sure she could perform satisfactorily in the classroom, that kind of thing. This is not something we do every day, so this would be uncharted territory for us. But, like I said earlier, I would not put her back in the classroom until I thought it was the right thing to do.
And if she could not return to the classroom, because that was part of the motion, that you would
Come back with
come
a
back
further
with an additional
recommendation.
recommendation. Mr. Frost?
Could you repeat the motion?
Wow. Made a motion to support the 7-day suspension, unpaid suspension of this teacher with the addition of an improvement plan instituted by the superintendent for return to the classroom. If it cannot occur, he will return to us with a different recommendation. And Mr. McCain gave a second. Was that,
Can
Ms.
you
Jimenez?
strengthen that? Because she already has an improvement plan, so your language doesn't add anything new to the mix. She already has an improvement plan, so that, whatever improvement plan she has isn't working. So what would be language to make sure that we're doing something different? And then my question is, how can you tell that there's something different going to happen if the person is not in front of students? It's like the chicken or the egg thing. She already has an improvement plan, so I'm just, my concern with the way the motion is worded is that she already has one, and your motion says that she has an improvement plan, so it's not adding a revised.
Madam
Doctor?
Chair, if I may,
Yes.
is it okay to offer
Yes,
a
please.
suggestion or an idea? Perhaps if the motion were amended or reworded to require alternate placement for a period of time until it was determined by the superintendent that it was appropriate to have this teacher back in the classroom, at which point he would bring that placement recommendation to the school board for approval.
I will amend my motion that after suspension, the required suspension, the teacher be placed to an alternative placement pending recommendation by the superintendent to return to a classroom. And then I will leave it up to the superintendent to provide whether it's, counseling improvement, career development, sensitivity. He will be able to figure that out.
Madam Chair, I didn't ask the superintendent if he felt comfortable with that recommendation. I apologize, Dr. Rendell.
It's all right, Dr. Fritz, you're a pretty smart guy, so I'm good with it.
All right, thank you.
So just to recap, I will amend my motion to to support the required suspension without pay of this teacher for 7 days. And after the required suspension, to go to an alternate placement of that teacher till such time that the superintendent can recommend return to the classroom.
My second.
Thank you.
So that means that it'll come back to us for approval.
before she goes in the classroom.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cece?
I have one question. We've talked about this progressive discipline policy that we have. Do we always use that progressive discipline policy on every issue that comes up concerning employee discipline?
Depends on the severity of the misconduct. Some behaviors or actions are so egregious that we'd move directly to termination.
And you can just jump the policy?
But we're not jumping the policy.
No, not in this one, but the one that we had several weeks ago with Coach Joe, we went right to termination. And either we do it that way or we don't. I mean, you know, there's different opinions on how egregious that act was and the circumstances there, but we're not, I don't think we're not doing the same thing, you're using the same set of rules.
The policy allows you the ability to start at whatever level and up to and including termination. So we didn't jump the policy in a previous example. We followed the policy.
Well, why don't we do it in this case? If we
Because
can
it
jump it before, we can jump it now.
Yeah, but, Mr., that's what I was trying to, we didn't give notice. We can't jump it at this dais.
We'll have another board meeting in 2 weeks.
That's why the motion was coined or couched in that, I believe, for ample time for input, if that helps. Did you have anything further?
I did have one question. Like the movie Waiting for Superman, do we have rubber rooms where we just put teachers that are tenured and hang out until such time as we can find a place for them?
We do not have a rubber room.
Well, I mean, that's what they called it.
Right.
You know, that's in Waiting for Superman.
We do have an alternative placement that we put employees in if they're under investigation.
Second question, is this the absolute best motion we can make right now and support?
I believe legally it is. Ms. DeGresta?
It's something we're comfortable with, Board, so.
So the teacher's out of the classroom for 7 days, no pay, then they come back with pay, not in the classroom, until the superintendent comes back to us and recommends that she be placed back in the classroom. We hire a substitute, a good substitute, to handle that class, which apparently is a required class, I think someone down there said.
Yes.
It's an
That
elective
sums
class.
it up.
But it's a feeder that's required for it.
It's an elective course, but all of our classes are required.
And I just want to jump in. I do disagree with Dr. Fritz as far as we hire somebody to teach, and so they should teach. You know, my mother would always say every pot has a lid. As I said, we don't know. This is, again, why it's progressive. There might be a niche that we don't know what's going on with someone, in fairness, with anyone's, I mean, it doesn't have to be teaching, you know, it doesn't, we don't know where this will go, and we, you know, as I said, you just don't know. Things in life happen, but if somebody's savable for something, I think they would, that opportunity is also, we want to be generous in that thought as well. So I think that shows that as well. So, any further? All
Call
right.
for the question. Let's vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
4-1, Ms. Stang? Thank you. Now we're into the action agenda. Item A is a public hearing, and so at this time, we need to close this meeting. At 7:13, we will now open this meeting, the public hearing. This item deals with the public hearing and adoption of the new and revised and repealed school board policies. Dr. Rendell, have you documented that the public hearing was properly advertised in accordance with the state statutes?
Yes, we have.
Dr. Rendell, are there any written responses to the advertised public hearing to be read at this time?
No, there are not.
The public is invited to address this issue at this time. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to come forward to discuss this matter? Seeing none. Is there an individual representing any organization that wishes to come forward? The chair concludes that this announced public hearing on April 12th at 7:14 has been conducted pursuant to notice, and that ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. This meeting is ended, and we are now reconvening as the school board meeting. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Action item A is, if you recall back on February 9th, we had a workshop in the morning, a lengthy workshop on updating certain school board policies. We do contract with an agency called Neola that helps us update our policies, and most of our policy updates are a result of change in statute or other legislative action or action by the DOE. So we went through all the various policy updates with the board. We have made those changes, so we're seeking your approval to go forth with all these updated policies.
Do I have a motion?
Move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. Ms. Jimenez?
Yes, as Dr. Rendell said, we did have workshops where we went over all these policies, and one thing that I was glad to see was our compliance with Senate Bill 982. Throughout the country, there have been a lot of conversations and issues around transgender individuals, and I am glad to see that in our school district, when we look at the summary points, policies 1122, 2260, 3122, and 4122 have been revised to add pregnancy as a protected class pursuant to Senate Bill 982, and to clarify that an individual's transgender status falls within the scope of sex as a protected class. I have received a few emails from people concerned that our school district does not include this in their non-discrimination policy, and I am glad to see that we have moved in that direction, and we recognize that all individuals in our public schools and everywhere, but especially in our public schools, we need to show respect for everyone. So I will be supporting these changes.
Any further? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 Mustang. Item number B, approval to award the RFQ 2016-10 to multiple vendors for continuing contract for commissioning agent services. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Because of changes in the Florida Building Code, we now have to hire commissioning agents for any large HVAC projects. In this item, we are seeking approval to contract this work to 3 firms on a rotating or best fit basis for a calendar year with a possible renewal after that. Total cost to the board is $100,000. Mr. Morrison, did I leave anything out?
Dr. Rendell, thank you. You pretty much filled in everything. Chapter 4 of the Florida Building Code, adopted June 30, 2015, was changed to require the commissioning agents. As these projects arise, the commissioning agent services will be incorporated into the budget for the project when it arises. So with that, we ask your approval for the RFQ. We'll bring back the renewal in a year's time.
I'll entertain a motion. Thank you, Mr. McCain.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Mr. McCain. Mr. Frost.
No.
Any discussion? Mr. Searcy?
I have a question. Since it's going to be on a rotating basis, and next year, I guess, we'll look at this contract again, right?
Yes, the RFQ is valid for 1 year, and we'll bring it back for renewal.
Well, my request would be that at the end of the year, when you come back next year, that you would tell us the breakdown of the funds that went to each one of the contractors, because people have made accusations that we funnel all business to specific vendors, and I would like to have clarification that indeed it was a fair division of the project. So,
yes, sir. We will provide that information at the appropriate time.
We can certainly provide the information. Yep.
No further. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, Ms. Stang. Item C, approval to award RFP 2016-09 to multiple vendors for continuing contract for electrical services. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this item, we are seeking approval to enter into a continuing contract with the identified vendors for small electrical projects on an as-needed basis. In total, those projects are estimated to incur a cost of $150,000. Mr. Morrison.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rendell. Just for additional information for the board, Complete Electric is out of Sebastian, Jarrell is from Port St. Lucie, Paragon Electric is from Vero Beach, and Bismarck is from Port St. Lucie. So we try to look out for the local vendors, as you are aware, and try to keep the business local. Thank you.
Let's entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, Ms. Stang. Item number D, approval to piggyback the Palm Beach County School District's bid number 11C and -36S, and to issue a purchase order to the Hope Sierra Corporation for the installation of surveillance systems at all elementary schools. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this item, we are seeking approval to use an established bid to piggyback, so to speak, on that bid to issue a purchase order in the amount of $104,571 for the installation of security cameras at elementary schools. I believe Mr. Morrison and Mr. Green are both going to speak to this issue.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. I will address the procurement aspect, and Mr. Green will discuss the technology. Unfortunately, we're limited in the amount of information we can provide publicly because we kind of don't want the bad guys to know where we're putting these cameras. But State Board of Education Rule 6A101.2 allows the school board to reference any other political subdivision's bid in order to essentially save taxpayers money from going through the process again. We are currently piggybacking the Palm Beach County's bid, their work, and their prices. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Green to discuss the technology aspect of this.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Just wanted to clarify for you, because you have seen security systems come forward for our secondary schools. That is part of the 4-year millage. We had a 4-year phase plan to upgrade our old and failing technologies, and security camera systems at our secondary schools was part of that. This is different. This is out of capital dollars, was included in the 5-year capital plan, and it was at our elementary schools, and was as a result of a security audit we had a few years ago that brought forth recommendations for fencing and security cameras and other infrastructure. So 2 separate funding sources, 2 separate initiatives. One is to upgrade failing equipment we currently have. This is to enhance security at our elementary schools.
Okay. Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McCain. Ms. Jimenez.
I'm just glad we're moving forward and complying with our emergency plan. Thank you.
Mr. McCain? No further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5-0, Ms. Stang. Item E, approval of educational facilities supplementary plant survey number 5, version 4 for the School District of Indian River County. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In this item, we are asking for approval of a supplemental plant survey for Beachland Elementary. This is in accordance with the renovation project currently underway at Beachland Elementary. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. Board members, what you have before you is an approval to amend the spot survey for the Beachland Elementary. The spot survey was done in 2013. It's good for 5 years. However, at that time, it did not have the wing. So now we're required to bring back before the board the approval to add the wing to the spot survey. I believe in the backup you do have the Department of Education's Castaldi analysis, which gives us permission to move forward on this project. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Frost.
Second.
Ms. Jimenez, thank you. Mr. Frost?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Jimenez? No. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0, Ms. Stang. Item number F, the approval of Office of Educational Facilities Building Condition Change Building Replacement Raise for Vero Beach High School Citrus Bowl Buildings 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 3, 4, and 5. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In item F, we are asking for approval to submit a request to the FDOE, Florida Department of Education, to demolish the buildings at the Citrus Bowl that will be part of the Phase 2 renovations at the Citrus Bowl. This is a normal step in the process. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you, Dr. Rendell. What you have before you is the form that we're required to submit to the Department of Education in order to get the Castaldi approval, which you will notice in item G. The Castaldi approval is important, and particularly when you go to market, which we're heading to market on April 14th, so notify investors that these projects have been survey approved and approved by the state. So with that, we ask your approval to move forward with this change to the survey. Thank you.
I'll call for a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. McCain.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Jimenez. Mr. McCain. Ms. Jimenez. Any questions? Mr. Searcy.
Is any money involved in this?
No, sir, there was no cost to the district. This is purely administrative and in order for the DOE to do what they need to do on their end to give us the information, the approval to move forward. There was no cost to the district.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now, to Mr. Searcy's point earlier today, this is a late added amendment, or late added item, agenda item. And I just wonder if it's time sensitive or if it's something that, we could, with reasonableness, have put on the next agenda so that folks would have time to show up, although we didn't have any public input or participation tonight. However, I'm always reluctant to see things thrown on an agenda, and sometimes there is good reason, and I'm hoping that this is one of those times. And sometimes it's just because, the will of someone wants it that way. So, with all due respect, Mr. Superintendent, can you help me understand why the timeliness of this matter?
Some of the reason that it's delayed to where we would want is we were waiting on information from the DOE. They don't always operate on our calendar. One of the things that this is an administrative step in the process for a project that already has been approved. So we'd like to keep the timeline moving for the project. So that's why we wanted to add it to tonight's agenda rather than wait 2 more weeks to ask for approval. Mr. Morrison, anything else to add?
Yes, sir. As I mentioned before in the previous item, we are going into the market this Thursday, and the investors will be asking whether or not these projects are survey approved and also state approved. They will have the ability to walk away if we are not able to prove that these projects are state approved and board approved to amend the survey. It was sort of a domino effect, Mr. Frost, in the sense that we needed the form to be submitted in order to get the Castaldi for item G, which is to make the amendment for the Citrus Bowl renovations. So it was a domino effect. We do apologize for this, but this is not the norm for us. We do not want to make it the norm, but we feel that it was very time sensitive in order to add these to the agenda.
I do want to chime in that also certain paperwork was needed, and it was sort of like hurry up and wait, waiting for the department. And then I did meet Mr. Sanders. He was kind enough to meet halfway and rush and sign papers on Thursday, so I'm sure they would not have inconvenienced anyone at that point if it wasn't, a hurry up. And so I think it was not a planned emergency, if I'm to interpret it.
So just to be clear, funding is on the line if we were to not support this motion tonight?
Yes, sir. Funding,
Correct, okay.
we would have to scuttle the deal and essentially wait another month or so before we went to market. As again, we do apologize for this, but for the last week or so, we've been going through a fire drill behind the scenes in order to get this to the board. And obviously, we do not want to make this a habit or a practice, but we felt this one was definitely time sensitive.
And I think this would probably be a good time to explain to the layman, if people are watching, and we also have students here, what the Castaldi report is. We throw out words sometimes and people don't understand why that document is needed. So if you could explain what that
Sure.
process, why that's needed.
The Castaldi analysis is a process. It's essentially a mathematical calculation that the state goes through to demonstrate that it is more feasible to demolish a building than to renovate it and put good money into it. So we have, in 2 instances for Vero Beach High School, the Citrus Bowl, as well as the Beachland Wings that were built in 1957. So these are over 50-year-old buildings, and the state, with that, we can move forward with the demolition of those facilities. So we have the state's permission to do so. So that is what the Castaldi analysis is.
Thank you. And then from my knowledge, it doesn't always have to be over 50 years? Could it be a building that's damaged by a hurricane or something?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Any further? Mr. Searcy?
Question. You're going to market in a couple of weeks or whatever.
No, a couple of days.
Couple
On
days.
Thursday.
Are you covered on the Beachland operation too? Because that's going to be in part of that.
Yes, sir.
But is it included in this package here? I didn't notice it.
So
Maybe
the
I missed it.
the item that you just approved on E is the educational plant survey amendment for Beachland. The item F and G relate to the Citrus Bowl. When we go to market, everything will be combined as one transaction.
I want to make sure you were covered for that.
Yes, sir.
Monkey wrench in this thing.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0 Mustang. For item F, we're now on item G, approval of educational facility supplement plant survey number 5, version 5, for the school district of Indian River County. Dr. Rendell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item G is related to item F, but it's very similar to item E. It's to follow along to the Beachland project, but now for the Citrus Bowl. In this item, we're asking for approval of a supplemental plant survey for the renovations at the Citrus Bowl as part of Phase 2. Mr. Morrison?
Yes, sir. As previously mentioned, this Ed Plant survey is required to reference the Castaldi approval date, which is why you kind of have that domino effect. So we ask for your approval to amend the survey, submit this to the DOE for the Citrus Bowl. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Thank you, Mr. Frost. Second? Thank you, Mr. McCain. Mr. Frost, on your motion.
No, ma'am.
Mr. McCain. Any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 5-0 Mustang. That brings us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have some announcements to make. Tomorrow evening, Wednesday evening, April 13th at Fellsmere Elementary, we are hosting a public meeting at 6 p.m. to discuss some of the information that's been out there about air quality issues at Fellsmere Elementary, to dispel a lot of myths and urban legend, to make sure that the truth gets out there about what's actually going on at Fellsmere and what we've been doing to correct any deficiencies. So that's at 6 p.m. tomorrow at Fellsmere Elementary in the cafeteria. We have noticed local media and all of the families at Fellsmere in the communities, and local officials, actually. I do want to make an announcement. I'm not sure if everybody's aware that Pelican Island Elementary has been named a Project Learning Tree School. Pelican Island Elementary has invested in its surroundings. It's surrounded by a natural habitat, so they're going to take some initiative and bring that natural habitat into the classroom and do a lot of work educating the students on the environment that surrounds Pelican Island and all the ecological ecosystems that are around that school. And it's Project Learning Tree School. If you Google Project Learning Tree, you can see what it's all about. They're actually going to have a big celebration there on Earth Day coming up. But that's going to be the focus at Pelican Island Elementary from here on out. It's an ecologically awareness school, and they're going to do a lot of work in science and really in the biology or botany field. And I do want to, I hope I'm not going to steal Ms. Simchek's thunder, but last night we did attend the Pride of the Tribe ceremony, the scholar ceremony at Vero Beach High School. It used to be called the Top 10% Award and ceremony. It was quite impressive to see that many students with that strong of academic record, but was also really impressive was to see them honoring their teachers. The seniors do get to pick a teacher that they want to honor, and some of the honors ranged from their kindergarten or first grade teacher all the way up to their AP English literature teacher. So it was quite an impressive event. Also last Saturday night, I attended an event at the Gifford Youth Achievement Center, also for some of our seniors who are heading off to college as part of the TRIO program. That program prepares these students to go off to college, and we are honoring some of the seniors at the TRIO ceremony on Saturday night, and that was a great event as well. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. No discussion items, board matters. Mr. Searcy?
One thing the superintendent failed to mention that he's got, if he doesn't make it as a superintendent, I understand that he's a pretty good pancake flipper.
Oh, yes.
I don't have anything.
Ms. Manager?
Yeah, I don't have anything. It's been a long day. We've had a lot of conversation. So I just want to thank Dr. Rendell for his visibility in the community and for your holding this session at Fellsmere to clarify the misinformation out there. And I would really like to encourage you, when you read things in the paper or you hear things in the media, try to make sure you get a balanced perspective. Turn it around. What's the other side of the story? Because a lot of times we're seeing things that misrepresent what is happening, and our school district is far from perfect, but there are a lot of hardworking teachers. We have a lot of hardworking leaders, and we are doing the best we can to educate our students. So it's really important that you give us the benefit of the doubt. Dr. Rendell has been very transparent, and I do hope that there is a good turnout tomorrow for those of you who are concerned about what is happening at Fellsmere in terms of mold. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frost?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Earlier today, we discussed getting out into the community. We're actually looking at having some meetings at Pelican Island Elementary and Oslo Middle, and we're still firming up the dates on those, hopefully. So I hope the community will come and engage. You know, it was kind of tough tonight not having any input, but that's the way it is sometimes. And Mr. Superintendent, I didn't want you to, I would like to take this opportunity to say that it's not that I didn't support your motion earlier, it's just that I felt it didn't go far enough. I trust that you're doing a good job.
Understand. Yes, sir.
And I appreciate. And I've seen him work the griddle. He actually relieved me, thank goodness.
Mr. Frost got it going before I got there.
I just keeping it warm, just keeping the apron warm. I will be out there tomorrow night at Fellsmere at 6. I hope you'll come out. And, you know, as has been said many times, don't necessarily believe everything just because it's written. Come out and investigate for yourself. And if you want to yell at me, come yell at me. You don't have to go to Starbucks. You know, maybe we'll go viral. Who knows? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes. Last night was a good night at the top 10% in the scholar ceremony in Pride of the Tribe. The thing that I like about that is that students honor their most influential teacher or mentor, and it's always a very sweet thing to see. Additionally, I had the pleasure to sit on the Agnes Peoples Award Committee. There was a woman in the 50s. She left, it was in honor of her mother-in-law, and they put a lot of stock aside so that a young woman, because go back in time, in the 50s, women, it was not thought of to go to a university. And it was to a woman from Vero Beach High School to go to the University of Florida. Well, 20, 30 years later, lawyers got involved and said the essence of that really is a state university and a college, a high school student, female student. So it was a 2-day process, and we had several applicants. Met with Principal O'Keefe and Principal Racine and whittled down those applicants to interviews on this another day. They were invited, and I have to say that there was tissues, there were moments of being, you know, ladies I'd never met before. I was so proud of the caliber of students that we have and the maturity and the direction that they already have at such a young age. You know, it just gives me chills. It was just a very beautiful, you know, and I was lucky enough to be a part of that. Those awards are forthcoming, and so I don't want to wreck that, but a very exciting time to just see the generosity of this family to make that possible for some, you know, young ladies in this community. So that was very rewarding. And that's about it. With nothing further, do you have any closing videos, or we've seen it?
We've been playing the video at the beginning of the meeting, so we won't have any clips.
All right, well, with that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming.